Hello, I received a Runcam Eagle 2 Pro FPV camera in the mail a while ago. Runcam has been coming out with these things so quickly that, to be honest, I had not even heard of this one until I saw it in my mailbox, because Runcam once again sent this to me without asking first whether I wanted to do a review of it. So as such, I did not really feel very obligated to hurry to do a review. So it's been sitting here for a couple of weeks, biding its time until some terrible accident befell one of my other FPV cameras, which is what eventually happened. So this is just the case of it here. I have the actual cameras in my quad, which we'll have a look at in a minute. But just to sort of summarize what this camera is all about, it's quite impressive, really. It has NTSC and PAL selectable. It has 4:3 screen ratio or 16:9 ratio selectable as well. It has audio, and it has the battery. Let's just have a look on here. We can see it says microphone there, so it has audio input with a microphone rather, and the battery display on the OSD as well. So it has everything. Oh, and of course it has the great wide dynamic range of these Eagle cameras that we've had in the previous Eagle as well. So they're really running out of features to put into these cameras these days. I don't know what else they could sort of really offer in the future, but that's the way it is. So those plugs there are completely compatible if you have something like a Swift, which is what I'm replacing here. If I can just focus on there we go. So all those plugs are exactly the same as the Swift 2, which makes it very easy just to swap them out. And I wanted to show you this case size here, because it is a fair bit bigger, at least front to back, than the Swift. You can see at the front there where the lens goes on, it's roughly 4mm longer front to back, but fortunately the other sizes, which are more important sizes, they have not changed. So this is still 28 28mm from side to side. So if you have been using a Swift or another Eagle or whatever, you can pretty much just swap it out and you're not going to have any problems fitting it in. So there's this case here. This is you get two of these front sections and you get two of these back sections. This is the one that I did not want to use because I wanted to use the one that has these sort of lugs on the back like that. So you get one of those too, but that's in my quad, so I can't really show it to you very easily here. You get a bunch of the normal stuff, so that is some screws, a little aluminium mount, one of those little joystick clicky things to change the settings, an extension cord to make it easier to change the settings, and then you get a 3-wire output plug and a 5-wire output plug. The 5-wire output plug, of course, has the audio and battery voltage leads coming out of it as well. So let's just jump straight into a bit of video comparison of these. This is the Swift and the Eagle 2. So it's a bit hard to make a video for this because there's not really much to show that we have not already seen in the Eagle. It's basically all the same stuff visually to look at. And this camera mainly only adds the features of NTSC or PAL switchable and 16:9 or 4:3 ratio switching. So as far as looking at a side-by-side video like this goes, we're not really learning much more than if we were just looking at a side-by-side video of the Swift versus the original Eagle. I think they may have improved the wide dynamic range a little bit in this one. I just sort of get that impression, but it's been a while since I used Eagle, at least on a mini quad anyway, so I'm not too sure. But what you're probably noticing here is that the Eagle has a lot of pixelation, I guess you could call it, especially in the lines of thin things like the wires on the clothesline and wires of the fence and the scraggly branches on trees and so on. And when I saw this in the Eagle, when I looked at it last year, originally my opinion was that it didn't really bother me, so I flew with it quite often like that, and I didn't bother changing it in the settings too much. But I think they might have increased that effect in this one, because I find this does actually bother me when I'm looking at it, especially compared to the Swift, which makes things look quite a bit smoother. So I did end up changing the settings to completely take out all of those edging and pixelation features. They're calling it a feature, but I don't think it really helps much. So in the menu there's two options. One is called Edge, I think, and one is called Detail, and I just turn them right down to 0. So let's have a look at some footage of after I did that, and now we can see that the edging is actually still there a little bit, but it's much less than it was before. The other obvious difference between these two side-by-side pictures is that the Eagle has a much wider field of view. In fact, if I just freeze this frame here, in the Swift, I think this is a 2.8mm lens on the Swift, and we cannot even see either of the sides of the clothesline there. And if we just look at the wires of the clothesline, we do see a little bit of pixelation there, but I don't think this is actually coming from the post-processing of the edge filter that it was doing before. I think it's just merely because there are less pixels to deal with the same area of picture than the Swift is able to use, because the Swift is zoomed in quite a bit more on the scene, so it can give you a better picture of that smaller area. Another thing that I noticed about the Eagle, which you will not notice by looking at this video, is that it gets quite hot. I wouldn't say, no, not hot, but warm. It gets quite warm on the back. So it's clearly doing a lot more processing than the Swift does. Obviously it needs to do more processing to make the wide dynamic range work. But apart from the edge filtering artifacts, the picture on the Eagle is much more pleasant to look at. The colors are more accurate. The wide dynamic range is obviously much better, and this is mostly noticeable when you look up at the clouds and you can see the sun as a small or a smaller dot rather than just a big blob of white as it sometimes looks in the Swift. So let's have a quick look at the menu. Quad is just sitting here beside me on the desk, and I'm just going to put you down here. It's not really that much new to show. There's just a couple of new entries on the menu, so let's at least just have a look at those. So we have this menu that's a little bit hard to read. It doesn't have any black edging around the white text. I mean, it does at the bottom here, but this main menu doesn't do that, so it can be a little bit hard to read on a white background. So we have this one, video standard NTSC 60Hz, and then if I click to the right here, this will change to PAL 50Hz, and you'll also notice that the text here, which is butted up right at the bottom of the screen here, will actually move in a little bit, and it'll sort of resets and resyncs itself like that. So you get slightly more vertical view, but same amount of pixels, of course. So I'll just put that back to, oh no, I'll just leave it like that. And then we have screen format 16:9, and this is giving me quite a wide range of view, sort of way out to here. If I change this to 4:3, I'll do a better comparison of this afterwards with some static photos, but just for now, if you can, let's put something over there. So you can just see the edge of that silver knob on this dial on the right hand side of the screen, and if I change to 4:3, now all we can see is the prop. So actually a better way to do it would be to put the silver dial there, and we'll do that the other way around maybe. There you go. So you get a fair bit of extra view at the sides of the screen, but it doesn't change anything vertically. So personally for me, I don't really care. If I'm using a 16:9 screen, it would be preferable to have a 16:9 camera giving me the image to show on that screen, but for my Fat Shark goggles, I only have a 4:3 screen, so I prefer to actually have a 4:3 display. And that, as far as I know, is about the only new thing that we have menu-wise. We do have, of course, the typical stuff. So if I hold the down direction here, I can move this Runcam label around and stuff. But yeah, that much has not changed, and you can change your pilot name by holding up like this. Yeah, but that I don't think has changed, so I'll just stop there. Here's a comparison between 4:3 and 16:9 using an outside scene, which gives you a little bit more to look at. Notice that on the far right of the screen we can just see the edge of that tree, and on the far left top corner we can just see the edge of that tree. and then we switch to 16:9, and we can see quite a lot more at each side of the screen. And finally, let's have a look at a bit of FPV footage, because I did strike an issue with this that I think is worth mentioning. One issue that I already knew about was that the latency of these Eagle cameras is a little bit higher, or a little bit slower. The picture is a little bit slower to come through, so you can't, well, I feel at least that you can't really fly in as close proximity to trees and fences and to the ground and so on as you would with a Swift. So for that reason, I've decided that this camera is probably better off on a plane than on my mini quad, where I do like to fly through little gaps in trees and things quite often. As you can see, though, the picture itself is very nice. The sky there is not giving us any troubles, and the colors are very good and accurate. But one thing I noticed here, you can see there's quite a flash of white when I do a flip or back flip, and I did that a few times there just to sort of check that I wasn't imagining it. And can we do it again here? No. Yeah, I was just wondering if it might be the physical shaking of the camera that was causing a problem, but as you can see, I'm going through the trees there without too much trouble, and I think they have actually improved the latency relative to the original Eagle, which was fairly noticeably slower, laggy than the Swift. This one is not as noticeable, but there is, as we'll see at the end of this flight, I actually crashed because I was closer to the ground than I thought I was. And yeah, obviously there is a little bit of latency difference between this and the Swift, but it's like I said, it's not as bad as the original Eagle. So I think I might just cut. I think I'm just going to look at the sun and back again. And I think at this point I was just admiring the view, because even though it doesn't quite look, the colors look a bit washed out in this recording for some reason, when I was looking at this in my FPV view, it looked very, very pretty and nice and colourful, and yeah, just looked very, very nice. I was just enjoying the view, to be honest, flying around. But I think I'll cut this video here and switch to the next one, where I did a little bit more exploring regarding that problem where it was flashing white, and I found it actually got quite bad. So let me show you that. Oh, before we do that, let me just show you the end of this flight where I crashed because I was closer to the ground than I thought I was, and I'm absolutely certain this would not have happened if I was using a Swift. So while it's not as bad as the original Eagle, the latency is definitely not as good as the ordinary Swift cameras. So here we can see that it's a little bit overcast now. We've lost the sun, and there you can see everything goes white after the flip. I'm not sure if this is because it's overcast now, but I found that I could reproduce that whiteout problem quite reliably by doing either a forward flip or a back flip. It seemed like a forward flip would do it more reliably, but there's also it seemed like the whiteness of the sky there was quite slow to fade out too. So I just wanted to do a whole bunch of forward flips to reproduce this. There we go again. See, the whole thing whites out for some reason. So I'm not sure if this is a problem with just this one unit that I have. Maybe this is not something that anybody else has seen, and it could be that you'd need just this right situation with overcastness in the sky like that and pointing directly at the clouds and so on. But I thought I should mention that because it was a little bit unsettling, to say the least, when you're flying and you see that. And again, I thought perhaps it was just something physical shaking around inside the camera, but when I do a side flip, like left or right, it didn't do it. And somewhere towards the end of this flight, I did manage to reproduce the whiteout effect. See, with a forward flip like that, it happens almost every time, and that's a back flip, and it happens quite reliably too. But I managed to do a yaw spin and also recreate that whiteout happening. So it's not something to do with the way that the camera is physically being shaken around. It's just something to do with the way that the brightness of the sun goes out of the frame and then back in again. And it just sort of doesn't seem to be able to adjust quick enough, which is interesting because I never saw this problem. There we go again. I never saw this problem with the original Eagle. So I don't know what's up with this, but I thought it would be at least worth mentioning. If anybody else has one of these cameras and they see this effect too, maybe you can comment on that in the comments below. But that's about all I have to say on this subject, so I hope that was interesting for somebody, and thanks for watching.